Hi everyone, I'm Emma. I will talk about my action research project. So I taught at Philadelphia Senior Center in this semester. My students are all senior Chinese immigrants. They are all beginner level students in their 60 to 80 years old. I taught them daily English and I have covered topics including personal information, structure, time, number, and prepositions. So one problem in my teaching is that my students always forget vocabularies I have already taught them, and I would like to focus on this part. So my research question is what strategies can effectively help my senior students to memorize vocabulary? And basically I use two strategies. The first one is review and recycle words frequently, and the second one is called organization. So for the first strategy, actually, many research papers, articles mention this strategy. Brad Jock's article, How to Maximize the Language Learning of Senior Learners, suggests to repeat and recycle language points systematically. And Pat's article, 7 Infallible Tricks to Help ESL Students Remember New Vocabulary, suggests to use the right timing for repetition. So for this strategy, I basically use three methods. The first one is design review activity at the beginning of each class. So in each class, I will design an activity to review the words students have learned in last week. And I find games are quite useful in this part, like bingo game, Jeopardy game, and so on. I think the reason could be that games are quite interesting and students are more motivated into these activities. And if they want to win the game, they need to know the words. So this one is really effective. So the second method I used is to incorporate words students have learned into new content or new topics. For example, the first time I told my student date of birth was in the class of personal information. I told them words of 12 months and ordinal numbers. And then after about 1 month in the class of number, I reviewed the words of 12 months and also ordinal numbers. And the results show that my students have a good memory of 12 months, but they forget almost all the words of ordinal numbers. So I review these numbers for them and ask them to practice saying their own date of birth. Then after 1 week, in the class of making an appointment with a doctor, I have them to do a script study, and in this activity, I reviewed some content of personal information, and compare with some content about like first name and last name. My students have a better memory of date of birth. They almost remember all the words of 12 months and ordinal numbers, and they can say their date of birth correctly. So these results show that this review and recycle is quite useful. So from my experience, after 3 to 4 times of reviewing this way, my students can have a good memory of these words. But if you stop there and have a check of these words about like 2 weeks or 1 month later, the students are really likely to forget these words again. So it's very important to repeat these words and recycling for them very frequently. And another one problem is that I cannot repeat and review all the words they have learned in this way, and they have many new words to learn in each week. It's not realistic for them to only depend on the class time to review these words. So here comes my third method, which is to assign my students homework of reviewing vocabulary every day and make records of it. I only tried this method once near the end of the semester, so the effect of it is really hard to say now, but I have already found some problems. The first is my students might forget to do this homework. At the time I checked their records, I found only 3 students completed 3 days of records in a week, and one student completed just one day. So I think this is because my students have already led the school life for a long time. They may not be used to doing the homework. And the second problem is one of my students told me even if she reviewed the words the day before, she will forget it the morning when she woke up. And another student told me she will forget these words very quickly after the class, and each time she needs to use the vocabulary dictionary in the phone to check the words' pronunciations and meanings. But I think I will try this method more in the next semester maybe. And if they can continue reviewing the vocabularies by themselves and form a habit of it, I think this will be beneficial for them to memorize the word. And my second strategy is called organization. This is from Burns' book, Cognitive Development and Learning in Instructional Context. Basically, organization is to arrange words into subgroups or hierarchies of subgroups. Burns suggests this strategy can help students to encode the information in a more elaborate way, and also these categories can be used as retrieval cues to recall and memorize material later. I have used this strategy twice. One is to reviewing the symptoms. So there are different structures of describing symptoms. For example, by using have, feel, hurt, and sentence patterns like have a pain in. So, for example, have a headache, have a cold, feel dizzy, my leg hurts, I have a pain in my stomach. I want to use this strategy to help my students differentiate these different use of these structures and also to memorize them. So I give them several phrases and also the name of these categories, and let my students put these words or phrases into their corresponding categories. This activity is not difficult, so my students complete it very quickly and all did it quite well. After this activity, when I asked them if they feel clear about how to use these structures and memorize them, they said yes. And in next week, in the review activity, I write down these categories on the blackboard and let my students to think of phrases of symptoms in each categories. The results show that my students did remember many of the phrases and they recall them correctly. So I feel this strategy is quite useful for my students and I would like to try this more in the future. So basically these are the two strategies I have used in my action research project, and I think these two strategies are quite useful in various contexts because many students have difficulty in memorizing words, and not just for senior students but also for younger learners. And these two strategies can be adapted to help students in different proficiency levels and in different contexts. So teachers can always review and recycle words for students, and especially for younger learners, it's more likely for teachers to assign them a homework to review words by themselves. Teachers can teach students to make flashcards, or teachers can use strategies like vocabulary journal and checklist to help them do this homework. And for the strategy of organization, for students of low proficiency levels, teachers can provide the categories they have already created and let students to group these words they have learned. But for students of higher proficiency levels, teachers can let these students to create their own categories and then put the words into corresponding categories.